I, Alpha Tobias of the Werewolf Pack, reject you." The air rippled, heavy with the magic of broken vows. She felt it tear through her, 1,000 invisible claws raking across her chest. The mark on her neck burned, then dimmed to nothing. He wouldn't even look at her, not once. But her sister did. From the shadows behind him, Liana smiled the kind of smile that promised this had been her plan all along. Chapter 1. The Rescue. The smell of pine and blood was so thick it choked the air. Rain hammered the forest floor, turning the earth into a sucking mud that grabbed at Lyra's boots. Ahead, through the tangled brush, she heard the snarls, the wet, guttural sounds of a pack fight. But this wasn't sport. This was a culling. "Vespera!" Lyra screamed, shoving a low-hanging branch out of her face. She burst into the clearing. It was worse than she'd feared. 4 large, mangy rogues, their fur matted with burrs and old gore, had her sister surrounded. Vespera, her beautiful, pale sister, was backed against a sheer rock face, her ankle twisted at an unnatural angle. She held a silver dagger, but she was trembling, her eyes wide with a terror Lyra had never seen. The largest rogue, a brute with a scarred muzzle, lunged. "No!" Lyra roared. She didn't think, she just moved. Lyra wasn't the pack's strongest fighter. She wasn't Vespera, who trained with the warriors, nor was she blessed with the effortless grace that made her sister the jewel of the Silver Crest pack. Lyra was the quiet one, the healer, the one who knew herbs better than she knew combat. But she was fast. She grabbed a heavy, waterlogged log from the edge of the clearing, and with a desperate howl that ripped her own throat, she slammed it into the side of the rogue's head. The beast yelped, a sound of pure surprise, and stumbled. The other 3 turned, their attention snapping from the prize to the nuisance. "Run, Vespera! Get to the border!" Lyra yelled, dropping the log and pulling her own small skinning knife. It was a pathetic defense. "I can't, my ankle!" Vespera cried, sinking to the ground. Lyra's heart seized. She was trapped. They were both trapped. The scarred rogue shook his head, rage replacing his surprise. He stalked toward Lyra, his lips peeling back from yellowed teeth. "A second offering. The moon goddess is generous." He lunged. Lyra braced, knowing the impact would shatter her. But the rogue never reached her. A different rogue, smaller but faster, tried to flank her, and Vespera intercepted him, plunging her silver dagger deep into his shoulder. He howled and thrashed, buying Lyra a precious second. She's fighting back. That spark of shared courage was all Lyra needed. As the scarred leader turned to his wounded packmate, Lyra charged, not at him, but past him. She grabbed Vespera's arm, slinging it over her own shoulders. "On 3, now!" Hoisting her sister, Lyra drove them both forward, using Vespera's good leg and her own desperate strength. They half ran, half fell toward the dense woods. A claw raked Lyra's back, tearing through her leather tunic and searing her skin like fire. She screamed but didn't stop. They crashed through the undergrowth, thorns and branches whipping their faces. Behind them, the rogues gave chase, their howls echoing. "They're too fast, Lyra. Leave me," Vespera sobbed. "Never?" They reached the edge of a ravine. The river raged 30 feet below. It was too wide to jump. They were cornered again. The rogues burst through the trees, blocking their only retreat. The scarred leader padded forward, savoring the moment. "Nowhere to run, little wolves," he growled. Lyra gently set Vespera down, pushing her behind her. She faced the alpha rogue, her small knife held out. "You'll have to go through me." "That was always the plan," he sneered. He lunged. But Lyra had been watching him. He always led with his left. She dropped low, rolling under his attack, and came up behind him, plunging her tiny knife into the soft tissue of his hamstring. It was a healer's strike, precise and debilitating. He roared, collapsing as his leg gave out. But the other 2 were on her. A massive paw slammed into her chest, sending her flying. Her head connected with a stone, and the world exploded in white-hot agony. She felt a rib crack. She tried to get up, but her limbs wouldn't obey. Through a dizzying haze, she saw one of the remaining rogues advancing on Vespera, who was helpless on the ground. "No, I failed." "Vespera?" she whispered, her vision tunneling. Just as the rogue was about to strike, a deafening howl split the night. 3 massive wolves, their fur the color of shadow and steel, erupted from the trees. Their pack, the warriors. The rogues didn't even try to fight. They fled. Lyra's body finally gave out. The last thing she saw was her sister, safe, as the pack warriors secured the clearing. She managed one last ragged breath, the world turning black. "You're safe now?" she whispered to the mud. She collapsed, unconscious, the rain washing the blood from the deep gashes on her back. One of the warriors nudged her, then looked up at Vespera, who was now being tended to. Vespera stared down at her sister's broken form. For a fraction of a second, before the performance of grateful tears began, her beautiful face was not a mask of relief nor of fear. It was a mask of pure, cold calculation. Chapter 2. Recovery in Shadows. The scent of white willow bark and blood clover roused her. Lyra's eyes fluttered open to the familiar thatched ceiling of the pack infirmary. Every breath was a fresh agony, her ribs bound tightly, and the skin on her back felt like it was simmering over a low fire. She wakes. A soft voice murmured. It was Elsinore, the pack's eldest healer. Vespera, Lyra rasped, her throat raw. She is fine, Elsinore said, pressing a cool, damp cloth to Lyra's forehead. A sprained ankle, nothing more, thanks to you. Elsinore's stern face softened. That was a foolish thing you did, Lyra, but it was brave. The whole pack is speaking of it. Relief watched over Lyra, so potent it eclipsed the pain. Vespera was safe. That was all that mattered. She spent the next 3 days in a haze of healing drafts and fitful sleep. Pack members came in and out, bringing her small gifts. A carved piece of mountain ash, a strip of smoked jerky, a rare feather. They all praised her courage. To stand up to Alpha Magnus like that, said a young warrior named Siren. He's the leader of the ravaged Fang. They don't just attack. They're usually hired. Hired? Lyra murmured, her mind fuzzy. By who? Kieran shrugged. Who knows, but you drove them off. You're a hero, Lyra. The praise made her uncomfortable. She wasn't a hero. She was just a sister. On the 4th day, Vespera finally came to see her. She limped into the infirmary, her ankle wrapped in clean linen, her golden hair perfectly braided. She looked as radiant as ever. Lyra, she said, her voice quiet. Vespera, you're all right? Lyra tried to sit up but gasped as her ribs protested. Vespera rushed forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. Don't move. You're still weak. I was so scared, Lyra whispered, grabbing her sister's hand. When I saw them, I thought, I know, Vespera said, but her hand in Lyra's was limp and cold. She wasn't meeting her eyes. What is it? Lyra asked, a new, cold dread creeping past the warmth of the painkillers. Is something wrong? Are they coming back? No, nothing like that. Vespera pulled her hand away and walked to the window, staring out at the pack compound. You shouldn't have done it, Lyra. The words were a slap. What? Shouldn't have saved you? You don't understand what you've interfered with, Vespera snapped, her voice suddenly sharp, unfamiliar. She turned, her blue eyes flashing. You ruined things. Ruined what? Vespera, they would have killed you. They weren't there to kill me. Vespera lowered her voice, but the venom remained. They were there to negotiate. It was a misunderstanding. And you, with your heroics, you complicated everything. Lyra stared, confused and hurt. Negotiate? They were trying to tear you apart. Vespera let out an exasperated sigh, waving a dismissive hand. You wouldn't understand the politics, Lyra. Just stay out of it. Before Lyra could reply, Vespera was gone, leaving only the scent of lavender and a profound, chilling silence. Later that night, unable to sleep, Lyra overheard whispers from the hallway. It was 2 of the pack elders, Theodora and Marius. A terrible debt, Marius was saying, his voice grave. Alpha Tobias demands payment. The blood moon is in 2 days. It was meant to be Vespera, Theodora replied, her voice thin as dry leaves. The original treaty was clear. A high-ranking female from our Alpha's line, to be his mate, to settle the century-old blood feud. It was Vespera's duty. But now? Now, Theodora said, and Lyra felt her blood run cold. Vespera is tainted. She was attacked by rogues. Magnus's men. Alpha Tobias will not accept damaged goods. He will see it as an insult. He will wipe us out. Then what do? Marius asked. We have no other high-ranking females of age, only... There was a heavy pause. Lyra held her breath. Only the hero, Theodora said. The one who saved her sister. A greater offering. A sacrifice that proves our pack's honor. Lyra's heart hammered against her broken ribs. Offering? Sacrifice? They were talking about her. They were going to trade her to this unknown Alpha King, Tobias, to save Vespera from a duty she'd apparently failed. No, Vespera wouldn't let them. Vespera couldn't let them. She was her sister. She would stop this. Lyra closed her eyes, clutching the small wooden bird Siren had given her. She would wait. Vespera would come. Vespera would fix this. But as the moon climbed high, the only person who entered the infirmary was a grim-faced guard, holding a clean, formal silk tunic. "The elders request your presence," he said, his eyes averted. "You are to be honored at the border." Chapter 3. The Bargain. The forest was suffocatingly quiet. Vespera stood in a small clearing far from the compound, the moonlight turning her skin to porcelain. Across from her, wrapped in the traditional furs of her station, stood Elder Theodora. "He's furious," Theodora said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Alpha Tobias's envoy arrived an hour ago. He knows you were attacked. He knows Magnus's scent was on you." "I told you I was ambushed," Vespera hissed, her fist clenching. "It wasn't my fault." "It doesn't matter whose fault it was," Theodora countered, taking a slow step forward. "It happened. The pact was for a pure, untouched bride to unite the packs and end the feud. You are now compromised. He will not have you." Vespera's breath hitched. "Then what? He'll destroy us? All because of those filthy rogues?" "He will," Theodora said simply, "unless we offer him something better." Vespera went still. "Better? How?" "You were the payment for a debt, Vespera. A political offering. But a gift is different. A gift can be seen as an apology, a gesture of supreme honor." Theodora smiled, a thin reptilian stretching of her lips. "And what greater gift is there than the pack's newest beloved hero?" The implication settled on Vespera like a shroud. "Lyra," she breathed. "She saved you," Theodora continued, her voice like a siren song. "She proved her strength, her loyalty. She is pure, untouched. She is, in every way, a more valuable offering than you have become." Vespera's mind reeled. This was her fault. She had arranged to meet Magnus in the woods, not to be attacked, but to pay him off. She was secretly in love with a warrior from her own pack, Dragon, and she had been trying to hire the rogues to stage a failed kidnapping to make her seem unfit for the pact with Tobias. But Magnus had betrayed her, had tried to take her for himself, and Lyra had stumbled in and ruined everything. "She's my sister," Vespera whispered, the words tasting like ash. "She nearly died for me. And now she can save you," Theodora pressed, sensing her victory. "Think, child, if you go, he will reject you and slaughter us all. If you stay, you are shamed but alive. You can be with your precious dragon. Our pack survives. All it costs is Lyra." Tears welled in Vespera's eyes, hot and real. They were tears of fear, tears of rage, but mostly they were tears of profound, selfish relief. She wouldn't have to marry the brutal Alpha King. She wouldn't have to leave Dragon. She wouldn't be shamed and rejected in front of a strange pack. Lyra would. "She'll hate me," Vespera choked out. "She'll be an Alpha King's Luna. She will have more power and wealth than you or I could ever dream of." Theodora lied smoothly. "She'll thank you one day." Vespera looked up, the moonlight catching the silver tracks on her cheeks. Her fear and greed had twisted into a dark, desperate justification. Lyra was always the selfless one. Lyra understood sacrifice. This was just her greatest one. "She'll think she's being honored," Vespera said, her voice hardening as she accepted the plan. "She'll go willingly at first?" "Exactly. It is a great honor, after all. Just not the one she thinks." Theodora placed a bony hand on Vespera's shoulder. "The Alpha King is expecting the offering tonight. At the border, by the Blood Moon Peak." Theodora turned and melted back into the shadows. Vespera stood alone for a long time, the cold seeping into her bones. She hardened her heart, wall by wall, until the guilt was a tiny, manageable stone in the pit of her stomach. She walked back to the infirmary, her limp suddenly more pronounced, her face a perfect mask of sisterly concern. She pushed the door open to find Lyra, still pale and sore, being forced into a formal silk tunic by a pack guard. "Vespera, thank the goddess," Lyra cried, relief flooding her face. "They're trying to take me to the border. They said the Alpha wants to honor me. Tell them it's a mistake. I'm still injured." Vespera moved to Lyra's side and gently brushed her hair back. She smiled, her most beautiful, poisonous smile. "It's not a mistake, dearest," Vespera whispered, her voice like honey. "You deserve this. You deserve everything you're about to get." Chapter 4. The sail, the silk of the tunic was cold against Lyra's healing skin. It was an offering tunic, she realized, the kind woven with symbols of peace and submission. A cold knot of dread tightened in her stomach, but she pushed it down. Vespera was here. Vespera's smile, though strained, was reassuring. This was an honor. Where are we going exactly? Lyra asked, her voice trembling slightly as the guards, their faces like stone, flanked her. To the Blood Moon Peak, Vespera said, walking beside her. She didn't offer Lyra her arm for support, and Lyra's ribs ached with every step. Alpha Tobias is waiting. He's very eager to meet the wolf who saved his intended bride. The words eased some of Lyra's fear. His intended bride. Vespera. This was all just a formality then. A thank you for saving Vespera. The journey was slow. The two guards, Kale and Siren, were silent. Lyra recognized Siren, the young warrior who had called her a hero. He wouldn't look at her, his jaw set, his eyes fixed firmly on the path ahead. The dread returned, heavier this time. They reached the border, a high, windswept ridge that separated their territory from the vast dark lands of the Blood Moon Pack. The air was colder here, sharper, and they were not alone. A group of warriors stood waiting, their fur pelts thicker, their weapons heavier. They were not of her pack. They were strangers, and they radiated an aura of predatory power that made Lyra's inner wolf flatten its ears in submission. At their head stood a tall male. He wasn't the Alpha King, he was too young, but he was clearly in command. His eyes, the color of amber, scanned Lyra from head to toe, dismissive and cold. Vespera stepped forward, bowing her head slightly. Kale, Beta of the Blood Moon Pack, as promised, the offering. Lyra's breath hitched. The offering. The Beta Kale ignored Vespera. His gaze was locked on Lyra. This is not the one we were promised. This is not Vespera. No, Vespera said, her voice suddenly strong, projecting for all to hear. This is Lyra, my sister, the one who attacked me in the woods, who conspired with Magnus to take my place, the one who, in her greed, was wounded by her own co-conspirators. The world tilted. Lyra stared at her sister, her mouth opening, but no sound coming out. The betrayal was so sudden, so absolute, it was like a physical blow. Vespera, what? Lyra whispered. She is a traitor, Vespera continued, her voice ringing with false sorrow. She tried to kill me to steal my place, but our Alpha, in his wisdom, has chosen to offer her to you as tribute. A life for a life. She is a proven fighter. She will serve your pack, or die in your cells. It is your Alpha's choice. Lyra looked at Siren, the guard from her pack. He knew this was the lie. Siren's face was pale, his eyes squeezed shut. He was ashamed, but he was silent. I saved you, Lyra stammered, tears blurring her vision as she looked at Vespera. I saved your life. And you're giving me away? Vespera finally met her gaze. Her eyes were as cold and empty as the night sky. It was the only way. Vespera whispered, for Lyra's ears only. I'm sorry. Liar! Lyra screamed, lunging for her sister. She never made it. The Blood Moon guards were on her in an instant. A heavy hand clamped over her mouth, and another twisted her arms behind her back, agonizing her still healing injuries. Take her, Kale commanded, bored. He handed Vespera a heavy leather pouch that jingled with coin and a rolled treaty scroll. The payment. Vespera, no! Lyra shrieked against the guard's hand. She kicked and fought, her ribs screaming, but she was weak, outnumbered. She is spirited, Kale noted with a dark chuckle. The Alpha might enjoy breaking her. She is your problem now, Vespera said. She tucked the pouch into her belt and turned her back on her sister. Don't you walk away, Vespera! Lyra howled, the sound a desperate, animalistic plea. Vespera paused, but she did not turn around. She just walked away, disappearing into the woods, never once looking back. Lyra's strength gave out. The fight drained from her, replaced by a cold, black despair. She's going into shock, Beta, a guard said, holding her upright. Kale sighed, annoyed. He pulled a syringe from his belt, filled with a shimmering, viscous liquid. We don't have time for this. The Alpha is waiting. He jabbed the needle into Lyra's neck. Lyra gasped as the liquid ice of concentrated wolfsbane flooded her veins, paralyzing her wolf, silencing her mind. Her knees buckled. As the world dissolved into a gray, numb fog, the last thing she saw was the back of her sister's golden head, disappearing into the darkness of the home that had just sold her. Chapter 5. The Alpha's Cold Eyes. Lyra awoke to the clang of a metal door. Her head was thick with the wolfsbane hangover, a dull, pounding ache that felt like her skull was packed with wet cotton. She was on a cold, stone floor. a cell. The air was damp and smelled of rust and something feral. Her memories rushed back in a suffocating torrent. Vespera's lies. The border, the payment, sold. "Get up!" a voice growled. She flinched. The cell door was open. Kale the beta stood there, flanked by 2 other guards. "Alpha Tobias will see you now." Lyra's limbs felt like lead, but she forced herself to her feet, her pride the only thing she had left. She would not be dragged. She would not show them her weakness. Her ribs throbbed, a grim reminder of the heroism that had sealed her fate. They marched her down a stone hallway, up a flight of winding stairs, and into a vast hall. Unlike her pack's warm, communal longhouse, this was a fortress. The walls were dark stone, hung with weapons and the pelts of massive, unnatural-looking beasts. A fire roared in a hearth big enough to roast a bear, but it offered no warmth. At the far end of the hall, on a throne carved from the black petrified wood of an ancient forest, sat Alpha King Tobias. He was not what she expected. He was not an old, gnarled brute. He was young, perhaps only a few years older than her, and possessed a terrifying magnetic power. He was brutally handsome, with sharp aristocratic features, dark hair that fell just past his jaw, and eyes as gray and unforgiving as a winter storm. He radiated an aura of absolute control. He was also, she realized with a jolt that had nothing to do with fear, the most beautiful man she had ever seen. This is the one. His voice was a low, resonant growl that vibrated in Lyra's bones. "Yes, Alpha," Kale said. "The sister, the traitor Lyra." Tobias rose from his throne. He didn't walk, he flowed, moving with a predator's lethal grace. He stopped a few feet from her, his sheer size eclipsing the light from the fire. He was studying her, his gaze intense, analytical. He was looking for the curse, the violence Vespera had warned him about. Lyra met his gaze, her chin held high, though her heart was hammering so hard it hurt her broken ribs. "I am not a traitor." Her voice, though hoarse, was clear. A flicker of surprise crossed his features. Then his eyes narrowed. "You will not speak unless spoken to." He circled her, slow, like a wolf inspecting a trap. "The Silvercrest pack insulted me. They were to send me their finest, a bride to seal the pact. They sent me you." She attacked her sister to take her place, Kale supplied. "I did not," Lyra snapped, her rage overpowering her fear. "She lied. Vespera lied. I saved her." Tobias stopped directly in front of her. He was so close she could feel the heat rolling off his body. He leaned in, his storm-gray eyes searching hers. And then, it happened. It was not a sound or a feeling. It was a snap, a golden cord, invisible but overwhelmingly real, lashed out from her soul and slammed into his. It was recognition. It was destiny. It was a force so profound it stole her breath and made her knees buckle. "Mate?" The word exploded in her mind, a revelation of cosmic joy and simultaneous, unbearable horror. No, not him. Please, moon goddess, not him. She saw the recognition hit him too. His eyes widened, his pupils dilating, his nostrils flared as he truly smelled her for the first time. The scent of pine and crushed herbs. His mate. But just as quickly as the shock registered, it was replaced by something else. A mask of iron. Disgust. Pure, unadulterated rage. He had been told she was a murderous, power-hungry traitor, and the moon goddess, in her infinite cruelty, had just decreed that this thing was his other half. "No," he whispered, the word of venomous rejection of the truth. He looked at her, not as a mate, but as a curse, a blight, a weakness he had to excise. "You," he growled, grabbing her arm, his fingers biting into her skin like steel bands. He dragged her from the hall, out into the pre-dawn cold of the main courtyard. His pack, roused by the commotion, was beginning to gather. He threw her to the ground in the center of the yard. She landed hard, the impact forcing the air from her lungs. He stood over her, his shadow a looming monster in the firelight. He raised his voice for all his pack to hear. His face was a mask of cold, regal fury. "I, Alpha Tobias of the Blood Moon Pack," he roared, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Reject you." The words sliced through the night like a blade drawn across her soul. Her knees buckled, though she was already on the ground. The mate bond, freshly formed and vibrant, burned. It felt like her chest was being torn open, her very essence ripped out of her in a burst of agony only the cursed could know. She screamed, a raw, guttural sound of psychic pain. Around them, the Blood Moon Pack stood silent, their eyes averted. No one dared breathe. And then, just as her vision began to blur from the white-hot torment, she saw a flicker of movement on the battlements above. A shadow. distinct from the others. The shadow stepped into the torchlight. It was Vespera. She hadn't left. She had stayed to watch. As Lyra's world collapsed, her sister smiled. Slow, beautiful, poisonous. Chapter 6. Exile. The agony was absolute. It was not a clean cut, but a jagged tearing. The mate bond, which should have been a source of life and strength, had become an instrument of torture. Every breath Lyra drew felt like she was inhaling fire and exhaling glass. Tobias stood over her, his own body rigid, his jaw clenched. He was feeling it too. The severing of a true mate bond was a torment for both, a violation of nature's most sacred law. But where Lyra was destroyed by it, he was consumed by rage. He saw the pain as part of her curse, a final attempt to weaken him. You are Roshka, he spat, using the ancient guttural term, the unbonded, the wasted. It was a mark of ultimate shame, worse than Omega. Kale, Tobias barked, not looking away from Lyra's writhing form. Brand her. I want the mark of the unworthy on her before she's cast out. 2 guards hauled Lyra to her feet. She was barely conscious, her body limp, her mind shattered by the rejection. They dragged her to the main gate and shoved her against the outer wall. Kale emerged from the forge, holding a small iron brand. It wasn't hot, it was the opposite. It had been dipped in a solution of silver nitrate and wolfsbane, designed not to burn skin, but to burn the wolf. It was a mark of permanent banishment. Please, Lyra wept, the word a broken gasp. I'm innocent? They all are, Kale said, his voice flat. He pressed the brand to the back of her neck. Lyra shrieked. It was a new, different kind of pain. It wasn't the soul-deep ache of the rejection, but a chemical fire that seared her senses, silencing her inner wolf, cutting her off from its strength, its comfort. When Kale pulled the iron away, it left a pale, silver-white scar in the shape of a broken circle, the mark of the unworthy. You have until sunrise to be off Blood Moon land, Tobias commanded, his voice shaking with the effort of controlling his own pain. If my patrols find you after that, they have orders to hunt you. Now go. The gates of the fortress were opened. The guards shoved her out into the darkness, onto the rocky, unfamiliar trail. She stumbled, fell, and crawled. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to move. Behind her, the gates of the Blood Moon pack slammed shut, the sound echoing like the closing of a tomb. So, she was alone. Truly alone. Her pack had sold her. Her sister had betrayed her. And her mate, the one person in the universe designed to complete her, had rejected and branded her. She walked for hours, her bare feet bleeding on the stones, the world a blur of pain and humiliation. The bond break was a physical void in her chest, a black hole that sucked all warmth, all hope, all life from her. She still felt it, the ghost of the connection, but it was no longer a golden cord. It was a chain, and every link was a spike of ice. As the first gray light of dawn touched the horizon, Lyra collapsed at the edge of a shallow, muddy river that marked the border of the human lands. She was no longer welcome in the werewolf world. She lay there broken, staring at the gray water. It would be so easy to just roll into it, so easy to let the current take her, to end the pain. But as she closed her eyes, she didn't see Tobias's face. She saw Vespera's. She saw that slow, poisonous smile. A new emotion, hard and cold, began to form in the wreckage of her soul. It was a tiny, sharp crystal of rage. No, she would not die. She would not give her sister the satisfaction. She put her hands on the muddy bank, her muscles screaming, her wolf silent and caged by the brand. She vowed, not to the moon goddess who had abandoned her, but to the indifferent dark earth beneath her. I will survive, she rasped, her voice broken. I will live. And one day, I will make them all pay. She forced herself to her knees, every movement an agony. As she tried to stand, a wave of debilitating, violent nausea overcame her. It wasn't the rejection. It wasn't the brand. It was something else. Her hand, instinctively, fell to her stomach. She doubled over, vomiting into the weeds, her body trembling with a new, terrifying, and utterly impossible realization. Chapter 7. The Lonely Road. The world of humans was a world of cold iron and cold eyes. Weeks bled into a month. Lyra made her way to a small, forgotten town on the fringes of the territories, a place called Lowbrook, where the human world and the wild lands uneasily coexisted. She cut her hair short with her skinning knife, traded her silk tunic for a pair of rough-spun trousers and a man's shirt, and kept her head down. She found work at a tavern, washing dishes and swabbing floors, paid in stale bread and a few copper coins. The brand on her neck she kept hidden beneath a scarf, but she felt it constantly, a dull, cold ache. Her wolf was silent. The brand had done its work, severing her connection. She couldn't draw on its strength, its healing. Every cut, every bruise she got from her new harsh life lingered. She was, for all intents and purposes, human. And she was sick. Every morning, the smell of the tavern's sour ale and greasy food sent her retching into the alley. The other workers, a collection of human outcasts, gave her space, assuming she was just another drunkard. The pain of the rejection had subsided from a roaring inferno to a constant chilling emptiness. But sometimes, in the dead of night, she would wake up clutching her chest, the ghost of the bond flaring with his pain, a sharp, echoing reminder that he was still out there. She was haunted by flashbacks, Vespera's smile, Tobias's gray eyes wide with shock, then hardening with disgust, the feel of the cold iron on her neck. One night, the tavern owner, a gruff woman named Mara, caught her vomiting behind the building. "You're not a drunk," Mara said, her voice rough. She looked Lyra up and down, her eyes sharp. "You've got the look of all my nieces before a birthing. You're with child." Lyra froze. "No, that's not possible." "Not possible," Mara scoffed. "Girl, I know a pregnant woman when I see one. You've got that green guild look, and you're protecting your stomach. How far along?" I don't know," Lyra whispered, the world tilting. The nausea, the exhaustion, the one brief, terrifying moment of connection before the rejection. "It's not possible," she said again, more to herself. "A rejection, it severs everything." A true rejection, especially one between fated mates, was meant to purge all traces of the other. It was designed by the moon goddess to be a final, clean break. A pregnancy should not have been able to survive it. "Well, possible or not, it's there," Mara said, her voice softening a fraction. "Go see the hedge witch at the edge of the woods. Old Neris, she'll know for sure." Trembling, Lyra took her meager coins and went. Neris was an old woman who lived in a cluttered cottage that smelled of drying herbs and wood smoke. She wasn't a wolf, but she wasn't entirely human either. She had an aura of ancient neutral power. She took one look at Lyra's pale face and averted eyes and nodded. "You reek of werewolf, child, but it's muzzled. And you reek of something else. Sit." She gave Lyra a bitter tea, then pressed her gnarled, warm hands against her lower abdomen. Neris closed her eyes, her lips moving silently. Lyra held her breath. After a long moment, Neris's eyes snapped open, wide with shock and a strange, fearful awe. "Goddess preserve us," she breathed. I'm pregnant?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling. "Oh, you're pregnant, child, no doubt." Neris pulled her hands back as if burned. "But that's not what's impossible." "What is it?" Neris stared at her. "The father, his power, it's like a black sun, an alpha, a king." She looked at the scarf around Lyra's neck, and with a surprising quickness, she yanked it down. She gasped when she saw the pale, broken circle brand. "A Roshka brand," Neris whispered, horrified. "You were rejected by your true mate." "Yes," Lyra choked out. "And the babe? It lived?" Neris's eyes were filled with wonder. The bond was severed, but the child refused. It is holding on. It is an alpha's child, a true-blooded heir, and it is defying the rejection of its own father. Neris's gaze sharpened, her fear replaced by a sudden, fierce protectiveness. "This baby, it's a miracle, child, a thing that should not be. It's clinging to life by a thread of magic I've never seen before." She grabbed Lyra's shoulders. "You have to understand. This child isn't just a baby. It's a symbol. It's hope. And it's a threat. When your sister finds out, they will not stop until they've put you both in the ground." Chapter 8. The promise to her child. The world shifted on its axis. Before, Lyra's survival had been fueled by a cold, spiteful rage. It was a negative force, a desire to simply not give Vespera the satisfaction of her death. But Neris's words changed everything. A miracle, a child that refused to be rejected. She left the cottage, her hand pressed flat against her stomach. It wasn't just her life anymore. It was the life of a being that had fought for its own existence against the command of an alpha king. This child was a survivor, just like her. I will not let them hurt you, she whispered to the empty forest path. I swear it. That night, she didn't return to the tavern. She took the last of her coins and bought a sturdy knife, a flint, and a bag of dried beans. She walked away from Lowbrook, away from the human world, and into the deep, trackless wilderness of the Tamarack Mountains. Neutral territory, claimed by no pack, and feared by most humans. She found a new home, a crumbling, abandoned hunter's cabin, hidden in a high valley, miles from any path. The roof was half gone and the door was missing, but it was stone and it was defensible. The next few months were the hardest of her life. Winter set in. She was weak, her body grappling with the pregnancy and the lingering poison of the Roshka brand. But the promise to her child was an iron spine. She learned to survive. She patched the roof with pine boughs and mud. She learned to set snares, catching rabbits and squirrels, thanking them for their lives as she prepared them. Her healer's knowledge, once used for packmates, was now her greatest weapon. She found roots that eased her nausea, leaves that kept infection from her cuts. Her wolf remained silent, a ghost in the back of her mind, but her senses, honed by years of being a werewolf, were still there. She couldn't draw on the wolf's strength, but she still had its eyes, its ears. She learned to use them differently. She became a ghost, silent, watchful. She grew stronger. The mountain forged her weakness into resilience. Her body, once soft from pack life, became lean and hard. The pregnancy, miraculously, progressed. She felt the first tiny flutter of movement, and she wept, her first tears since the rejection. "Hello, little fighter," she murmured, sitting by her small, smoky fire. "It's just us against the world." She began to fight. Every day she trained. She practiced with her knife. She made a bow and, after weeks of frustrating failure, learned to shoot. She was clumsy at first, but desperation was a harsh teacher. She learned to move without sound, to mask her scent with mud and crushed pine needles. She was no longer a pack wolf, she was a predator. One night, as a blizzard howled outside her small cabin, she was jolted awake by a sudden, sharp, agonizing pull. It was the bond. She gasped, clutching her chest, her hand flying to the faint silver scar on her neck. It wasn't her pain. It was a familiar, echoing torment. It was his. Tobias? She hadn't felt him this strongly since the rejection. Why now? It felt like he was calling, searching. She scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding, and ran to the door, peering out into the swirling snow. There was nothing, just the wind. But she knew the distance between them, which had felt like a continent, had suddenly snapped taut. She backed into her cabin, her hand going to her swelling belly, her eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. He knows, she whispered to the storm. He knows I'm alive. Chapter 9, The Sisters Rise. While Lyra fought for survival in the wilderness, Vespera thrived in the heart of the Blood Moon Pack. She had arrived a week after Lyra's exile, playing the part of the grieving, terrified sister. She told Tobias a masterful, poisoned story. Lyra was always unstable. She'd wept, her beautiful face a mask of tragic sorrow, her hand clutching his arm. She was obsessed with the stories of the Alpha King. She found an old, dark witch, an elder named Theodora, who cursed her, who promised her a way to force a mate bond. When I was chosen for the pact, Lyra went mad. She set the rogues on me, hoping I'd be killed so she could take my place. I only escaped by the grace of the goddess. The story was brilliant. It explained Lyra's connection to Theodora, who had conveniently disappeared, paid off by Vespera. It explained the rogue attack, and it painted Lyra as a violent, cursed usurper. It made Tobias's rejection not a cruelty, but a necessity. He didn't make her his Luna. The ghost of the mate bond, the phantom pain he still felt, wouldn't allow him. He couldn't bond with another while the first bond, however broken, still ached. But he kept Vespera close. She was a cherished guest, a symbol of the alliance he had been forced to forge in blood and betrayal. She was the victim he had, in his mind, avenged. Vespera played her role to perfection. She was charming, graceful, and deeply sympathetic. She organized the pack's festivals, she advised the other females, she tended to Tobias with a sisterly devotion, never pushing, always understanding his pain. The pack began to adore her. They whispered that she should be the new Luna, that she was the healer the Alpha needed. She was slowly, skillfully, weaving her web around the entire pack. The news of her rise trickled out, carried by traveling merchants and rogues who passed through the human towns. Months later, in the town of Lowbrook, Where Lyra had returned briefly to trade furs for iron arrowheads, she heard the rumors. She sat in the corner of the tavern, cloaked and hooded, listening to two scruffy trappers. "Yeah, the Alpha King, up at Blood Moon. He's finally settling down," one said. "Heard he's taking a new Luna at the next Blood Moon." "About time," said the other. "Who's the female? One of his own?" "Nah, it's the sister of that Roshka he cast out last winter. The one who went mad and tried to kill her. He's taking the sister as his mate. Poetic justice, eh? He gets the right sister and she gets her traitor sister's crown." Lyra's cup slipped from her numb fingers, shattering on the floor. She fled the tavern, stumbling into the muddy street. His Luna, Vespera, had won. She had taken Lyra's life, Lyra's honor, and was now taking her place. The place that should have been hers. The heartbreak was a fresh, physical blow, sharper than the rejection had been. Back in the Blood Moon Fortress, Vespera stood with Tobias on a high balcony, overlooking the Packlands. He was restless, his hand often going to his chest, a pained look on his face. "You still feel her, don't you?" Vespera asked softly, placing her hand on his arm. Tobias's jaw tightened. "It's a phantom, a scar. It means nothing." "It's not a phantom, Tobias," she said, her voice filled with false concern. "It's the curse. She's still out there somewhere, and her dark magic still clinging to you. It's keeping you from healing." She stepped in front of him, looking up into his stormy eyes. "You must finalize the rejection. Perform the great severing ritual at the Blood Moon. It's the only way to truly be free of her curse." She leaned in, her voice a seductive whisper. "It's the only way you can be free? To be with me." Tobias looked down at her, his face a mask of conflict. The severing ritual was dark, ancient magic. It didn't just break a bond, it erased the rejected party's life force from the other. It could kill a weak wolf. He wanted to be free of the ache. He wanted peace. He looked at Vespera, his ally, his victim. He nodded. "At the Blood Moon, we will sever her for good." Chapter 10. The Alpha's Regret. Tobias stood in his study, the doors barred. The ache in his chest was a living thing, a clawed beast beneath his ribs. It had been nearly 8 months, and the pain wasn't fading. It was changing. The rejection hadn't worked. He'd rejected her. He'd branded her. He should be free. Yet he still felt her. A distant, thrumming presence, like a single, stubborn star in a black sky. Vespera said it was the curse, but doubt, a small, insidious seed, had begun to sprout. If Lyra was so dark, so cursed by a witch, why did the memory of her scent, pine and crushed herbs, smell like life? Why, in the brief, agonizing moment the bond had snapped into place, had her soul felt not like a void, but like his home? And why, when he remembered her eyes, did he see not madness, but profound, earth-shattering betrayal? "Kale," he barked. The beta entered, his face impassive. "Alpha, the reports you gathered from the Silvercrest border, read them to me again." Kale retrieved a scroll. "As I told you, Alpha, the story is conflicting. Vespera's official account is as we know it. She was attacked, Lyra was a conspirator. But the border patrols, they tell a different tale." "Which is?" Tobias growled, pacing. "They whisper, Alpha. They say Vespera was not the Pack's jewel. She was ambitious. They say Lyra was the healer, the quiet one. They say Lyra was seen dragging her sister from the woods, covered in wounds herself. They say the Silvercrest Pack was told Lyra was being honored for her heroism." Kale paused. "They all thought Lyra was being sent to you as a hero, not a traitor." The pieces clicked into place, forming a horrifying mosaic. A hero, offered as tribute. "She saved her? And you're giving me away?" Vespera lied. "She wasn't a traitor." Tobias whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. She wasn't a usurper. She was the sacrifice. He had been played. Vespera, the weeping victim, had orchestrated it all. She had used his pride, his fury at the insult of a compromised bride, to rid herself of her sister and secure her own place. And he, the Alpha King, had been her willing, blind executioner. He had rejected his true mate. He had branded her. He had cast her out injured and alone. The pain in his chest flared, and he finally understood what it was. It wasn't a curse. It was her life force, her resilience. Still tethered to his, refusing to die. "She's alive." "Where is Vespera?" he snarled. his eyes turning black with a primal rage so potent Kale took an involuntary step back. In the gardens, Alpha, with the Luna candidates. Send her to her quarters. Place 2 guards on her door. She is not to leave, not to speak to anyone. Alpha? Kale asked, stunned. Do it, Tobias roared. He grabbed Kale by the tunic, his control shattering. You were at the border, you took her, you administered the brand. Kale paled, his eyes wide with fear. Alpha, I was following your orders. The orders of her pack. Find her, Tobias commanded, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. You will not eat, you will not sleep, you will not rest until you find her. She's alive. I can feel her. He pushed Kale toward the door. Find my mate. Find her now. Chapter 11, The Discovery. Kale ran. He ran with the fear of a shamed wolf and the focus of the Alpha's best tracker. He started at the riverbank where Lyra had been cast out. Her scent was long gone, washed away by 100 storms, buried by a winter's snow. He went to Lowbrook, the human town. He sniffed out the dregs of the world, the places a werewolf outcast might hide. In the alley behind the tavern, beneath the stench of sour ale and refuse, he found it. Faint, old, but unmistakable, pine and crushed herbs. He followed the phantom trail out of the town, toward the neutral Tamarack Mountains. The scent was nearly impossible to track. She was masking it, a skill few possessed. She was hiding, and she was doing it well. But Kale was the beta of the Blood Moon Pack. He tracked her for 2 days, deeper into the unforgiving wilderness than he'd ever ventured. Tobias was right behind him. He'd left his pack, his duties, his rage, and followed Kale, drawn by the thrumming, agonizing pull of the bond. On the 3rd day, Kale stopped high on a ridge. He pointed down into a hidden valley. There, smoke. Tobias looked. A small stone cabin, barely visible, nestled in the trees. And her scent. It was no longer a phantom. It was real, sharp, and overwhelming. She was here. He told Kale to wait, to circle the perimeter. This he had to do alone. He moved down the slope, his heart a trapped bird in his chest. What would he say? I'm sorry I destroyed your life? I was deceived? The words were pathetic, empty. He reached the clearing, and he saw her. The woman splitting firewood by the cabin was not the soft, terrified girl he had rejected. This was a new creature. She was thin, but wiry and strong, her muscles corded. Her hair was shorn short and ragged. She wore patched trousers and a man's tunic, a heavy knife strapped to her thigh. And she was, unmistakably, heavily pregnant. The world stopped. Pregnant. His. The bond didn't just snap, it exploded. It rushed into the void his rejection had created, filling him with an agonizing, joyful, devastating warmth. She was alive. She was here. And she was carrying his heir. The child that had survived the rejection. The child that had been the anchor for his bond. Guilt, so profound it was a physical sickness, flooded him. He had done this. He had left his pregnant mate to fend for herself in the wilderness, to die. He must have made a sound, a choked breath, because she froze. She didn't look. She didn't gasp. She simply dropped the axe, snatched her larger hunting knife from its sheath, and spun to face him, all in one fluid, deadly motion. Her eyes met his. If his heart had been a trapped bird, her eyes set it on fire. They were not the eyes of a lover. They were not the eyes of a victim. They were the cold, hard yellow eyes of a cornered wolf, a mother protecting her den. Lyra, he breathed, his voice breaking. She didn't move. She just watched him, her knuckles white on the hilt of her knife. Lyra, He took one step forward, his hands open, desperate. I know what Vespera did. I was deceived. A sound, like dry leaves scraping stone, left her. It was a laugh, but it held no humor. It was the ugliest, most broken sound he had ever heard. Deceived, she repeated, her voice a rasp he barely recognized. You are an Alpha King. Your entire being is supposed to be a conduit for the truth. You are supposed to see souls. She took a menacing step toward him, her knife pointed at his throat. You didn't see me, she whispered, her voice shaking with a rage that was 8 months cold. You saw a political inconvenience. You saw a lie you wanted to believe. Lyra, please, he begged, tears welling in his eyes. The baby. You lost the right to speak of this baby, she snarled, and you lost the right to say my name. She raised the knife higher, her body coiled, ready to strike. Leave, she commanded. Leave, or I swear by the moon that abandoned me, I will put this through your throat. Chapter 12. The Sisters Panic. Vespera knew. The moment the guards were posted outside her door, she knew. They weren't there for her protection. Their faces were grim, their eyes cold. They were wardens. Tobias was gone. Not hunting, not on patrol. His scent had vanished from the fortress, heading east toward the mountains. She tore her room apart. She was trapped, but she wasn't powerless. She found what she was looking for, a small, loose stone in the hearth, where she kept her emergency coin and a single sharp sliver of obsidian. She waited until the guard changed. In the moment of distraction, she pressed the coin into the hand of a young, ambitious guard named Varric, one she had been charming for months. "He's gone to the Tamarack Mountains," she whispered, her eyes wide with fake terror. "My sister? She's alive. She's cursed Varric. She's luring him to a trap. She'll kill him." Varric hesitated. "If you help me," Vespera pressed, "if you help me save him, I will make you my personal guard when I'm Luna. You will have everything." That was all it took. "What do you need?" he asked. "Send a message, not to our pack, to Alpha Magnus of the Ravaged Fang." Varric recoiled. "Magnus? He's our enemy. He's her ally," Vespera lied. "He's the one helping her. Tell him the plan has changed. Tell him Lyra is in the cabin by the High Valley, and that Tobias is with her. Tell him to take both of them out. Now." She knew Magnus's greed. He hated Tobias, and he still wanted Lyra, whom he felt was stolen from him. The chance to kill the Alpha King and reclaim his prize would be irresistible. "But, my lady," Varric stammered, "if Alpha Tobias is killed, then the pack will need a strong new leader," Vespera said, her voice dropping, "and you will be the one who avenged him by telling me where his killers were. You will be a hero." She had him. He nodded, his eyes bright with ambition, and slipped away. Vespera turned from the door, her heart hammering. This was it, the final, desperate gamble. She couldn't let Tobias bring Lyra back. She couldn't let him see that baby. She had one more card to play. She used the obsidian sliver to slice her own arm, a deep, painful gash. She smeared the blood on her face, tore her dress, and backed into the corner of the room. When the main guard, Kale's second, returned for his rotation, she began to scream. "He's gone mad! Tobias! He found out she's alive and he's joined her. He locked me in here. He's a traitor to his own pack. He's gone to his cursed mate." The fortress erupted in chaos. Meanwhile, miles away in the Tamarack Mountains, Alpha Magnus and 5 of his most brutal rogues caught the scent of smoke and the unmistakable, powerful scent of the Blood Moon Alpha. Magnus smiled, his scarred muzzle pulling back. "He's trapped himself," he growled to his men. "The Alpha King, the traitor bitch, and an unborn pup, all in one tiny stone box." He looked up at the sky. The moon was full, a bloated, red-tinged orb, the Blood Moon. "A perfect night," he sneered, "for a hunt?" Chapter 13, Blood Moon Confrontation. The air in the High Valley grew tense, electric. The blood moon rose, painting the snow-dusted peaks in an eerie, crimson light. "I am not leaving you," Tobias said, his voice raw. He stood 10 feet from the cabin, his hands still open, his heart bleeding. "You are," Lyra panted, her knife still aimed at him. "You are a threat. You are the only threat." And then she cried out, a sharp, sudden gasp. She dropped the knife, her hand flying to her abdomen as a powerful contraction seized her. The stress, the moon, the shock of his arrival. It had triggered her labor. "The baby." She gasped, falling to her knees. "No, not now. It's too soon." Tobias lunged, his alpha instincts overriding her rejection. He was at her side in an instant, lifting her. "Lyra, you're in labor." "Get your hands off me," she snarled, striking his chest, but her blows were weak. "I will not let you do this alone," he roared, just as a new sound cut through the night. A howl, close, too close, and it wasn't Kale. Tobias's head snapped up, his eyes turned to molten gold. "Rogues?" He didn't hesitate. He half-carried, half-dragged Lyra back into the cabin, kicking the flimsy door shut and barring it with a log. "Stay down," he commanded. "They're here for me," Lyra breathed, terror finally breaking through her rage as she recognized the scent. "Magnus, the rogue alpha from the forest. He's not just here for you," Tobias said, his voice a low, lethal growl. "He's here for me." He knew instantly this was Vespera's doing. A cleanup. The cabin exploded. The rotting wood of the back wall burst inward as Magnus, in his massive, scarred wolf form, crashed through. He landed in the center of the small room, his eyes instantly locking on Lyra, who was huddled against the wall, crippled by another contraction. At the same moment, 2 other rogues shattered the front door. Tobias didn't wait. He shifted. The change was instantaneous and violent. His bones cracked and reformed. His skin split to reveal thick black fur. Where a man had stood, a massive wolf, half again as big as Magnus, now stood. His fangs bared, a sound of pure elemental fury ripping from his throat. He met Magnus's charge head-on. The cabin became a blur of black and gray fur, of claws and teeth. The sound was deafening. Kale, hearing the fight, charged down the ridge, shifting mid-stride. He intercepted the 2 other rogues, a whirlwind of gray and silver fur, trying to keep them out of the cabin, to keep them from Lyra. Inside, Tobias was a force of nature. He was an alpha king, and this was his mate's den. He slammed Magnus against the stone hearth, his jaws closing on the rogue's shoulder. Magnus howled, blinded by rage and pain, and raked his claws across Tobias's flank, opening deep gashes. Lyra screamed as another contraction hit, harder this time. The sound of her pain drove Tobias mad. He threw Magnus off him, sending the rogue crashing into the table. But the moment he turned his attention, a new shadow filled the broken doorway. It was Vespera. She was holding a long, silver-bladed knife, her face a mask of pale, beautiful insanity. She must have escaped, must have followed them. "You just won't die," she shrieked, her eyes locked on Lyra. She saw the babe was coming. She saw Tobias, wounded but dominant. She saw her entire world, her entire future turning to ash. She lunged, not at the wolves, but at Lyra. "Vespera, no!" Lyra cried, trying to scramble away, but she was trapped. Just as Vespera raised the silver knife, ready to plunge it into her sister's pregnant belly, a black-furred demon slammed into her side. Tobias, shifting back to his human form in a split second, tackled her. Naked, bleeding from a dozen wounds, he wrenched the knife from her hand and threw her against the far wall. She hit it with a sickening crack and crumpled to the floor, stunned and sobbing. He stood over her, his chest heaving, his body a map of blood and fury. Lyra gave a desperate, ragged cry. The world was narrowing. There was nothing but the pain, the blood, the cabin floor. "Tobias!" she sobbed, her body bearing down. "The baby, Alpha, it's coming. It's coming now." Chapter 14. Redemption and Birth. The cabin was a vortex of chaos. Kale, having dispatched one rogue and driven off the other, stood in the doorway, his wolf form bloodied, his eyes wide. Magnus, seeing his Alpha King in human form and Vespera defeated, scrambled to his feet and fled through the broken wall, disappearing into the night. The only sounds were Vespera's pathetic sobs and Lyra's strained, agonized pants. "Breathe, Lyra." Tobias was at her side. He ripped a clean blanket from her cot, his hands, covered in his own blood and Magnus's, surprisingly gentle. "Breathe with me. You're not alone. I'm here." He was an alpha. His presence, his command, was a force. He pushed his will, his strength into her, not as a command, but as an anchor. "You can do this. We can do this." Lyra locked eyes with him. In that moment, there was no past, no betrayal, only the present, only the pain. She nodded, grabbing his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "Kale," Tobias barked, never taking his eyes off Lyra. "Bind the sister. Take her outside." "No," Lyra gasped, her voice tight, seizing his wrist. "Not his judgment. Mine." All motion stopped. Tobias looked at her, his expression unreadable. Kale hesitated. Vespera, clutching her bleeding head, looked up. "Lyra, please. He made me. Theodora." "I was scared." "Quiet," Lyra commanded, and the weak whimpering sound died in Vespera's throat. Lyra breathed through another wave of agony, her eyes never leaving her sister's. "You are my blood. I saved your life. And you sold me. Lyra, You sold me," Lyra repeated, her voice a steel whip. "You let him reject me. You let him brand me. And you came here tonight. To kill my child." She let go of Tobias's arm and pointed a trembling finger at Vespera. "You will not die," Lyra decreed, her voice ringing with an authority that eclipsed even the alphas. "That is too easy. You will live with what you have done. You will be stripped of your name, your pack, and your wolf. You will be Roshka." It was the same fate Vespera had gleefully watched Lyra suffer. "No!" Vespera shrieked. "No, you can't. I'm... Kale," Lyra commanded, her gaze unwavering. "Take her. Brand her with the mark she gave me." Kale looked at Tobias. Tobias nodded once. This was Lyra's justice. Kale dragged the screaming, fighting Vespera out of the cabin. A moment later, a single horrifying shriek echoed through the valley as the cold, silver-infused brand was pressed to Vespera's skin, severing her connection to her wolf, to her pack, forever. As the sound faded, Lyra gave one final, desperate cry. It was answered by another. A new sound, thin, furious, and vibrantly alive. A baby's wail filled the cabin. Tobias's breath hitched. Tears streamed down his face, washing paths through the blood and grime. He quickly, skillfully, wrapped the infant in the last clean piece of linen Lyra owned. A son, he whispered, his voice thick with 1,000 emotions. Lyra, he's perfect. He knelt before her, holding out their child. He was an alpha king, naked, bleeding, and kneeling in the dirt floor of a broken cabin, utterly humbled. You're perfect, he choked out. Lyra! Lyra, exhausted to her very bones, just stared at him. She looked at the child, her son, her little fighter. She had done it. He was safe. She reached out and touched the baby's cheek. Then she looked at Tobias, her mate, her betrayer. Her eyes were clear and they held no malice, only a vast, weary emptiness. My forgiveness, she whispered, her voice barely audible, is not the same as my trust. Chapter 15, A New Dawn. 6 months later, the Blood Moon Pack was a different place. Lyra had returned, but not as a prisoner and not as a guest. She had returned as the Cora Lyr, the mother of the heir, a title that afforded her a status outside the normal pack hierarchy. She did not live in the Alpha's main house. At her request, she and her son occupied a small, respected cottage near the edge of the forest, the one that had once belonged to the pack's head healer. It was her own space, her own domain. Her wolf had returned, awakened by the birth of her son. The Rashka brand had faded, its dark magic burned away by the miracle of the child who had defied it. She was whole again. But she was not the same. The pack adored her. They had heard the truth of Vespera's lies, of Lyra's survival, of the Alpha's blind mistake. They respected her, not as a victim, but as an icon of resilience. She was the wolf who had been broken and had forged herself anew in the wild. She spent her days training the pack's trackers, teaching them the scent masking techniques and the silent hunting skills she had learned in the mountains. Their son, whom she had named Orion, was a perfect blend of them both. He had her quiet, watchful eyes and his father's undeniable aura of command. Tobias, for his part, was a changed alpha. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet, desperate patience. He had confessed his sins to the entire pack, admitting his blindness and his guilt. He did not command Lyra. He courted her. He visited her cottage every day. He didn't enter unless invited. He brought her the first kill from his hunts. He brought her rare herbs from the mountains. He sat on the floor of her cottage and played with Orion, his large, scarred hands gentle as he built block towers for his son. He was trying, day by day, to earn back what he had thrown away with a single, furious word. The rejection was long broken, shattered by the birth of the heir. The mate bond between them was no longer a burning pain or a cold void. It was a warm, steady hum, a golden cord that connected them, waiting. One evening, at the start of the Harvest Moon Festival, he came to her. The entire pack was gathered in the main square. He didn't come in armor or in his alpha regalia. He came in a simple linen tunic. He walked to her, in front of everyone, and knelt in the grass at her feet. Lyra, he said, his voice quiet but carrying to every ear. I have no right to ask you for anything. You are my mate and I rejected you. You are my queen and I exiled you. But I'm asking. He took her hand. The bond is healed. But our pack is not. They need their Luna. Orion needs his mother and father and His voice broke. I need my other half. I am begging you, accept my mark. Be my Luna, rule beside me. A hush fell over the pack. Lyra looked down at him, this powerful alpha king, kneeling before her. She looked at Orion, babbling in the arms of Kale's mate. She looked at the pack, her pack, who watched her with hope. She placed her free hand on his cheek, feeling the rough stubble, the warmth of his skin. I am already your equal, Tobias, she said softly, but her voice, like his, carried, I don't need a title for that. I learned my worth in a broken-down cabin, not on a throne. His face fell, but she smiled, a small, true smile. But, she continued, our pack does need strength. It needs a Luna who understands betrayal, and a Luna who knows how to survive. She pulled him to his feet, standing face to face, equals. I accept. He let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for a year. He didn't kiss her. Instead, he did what he should have done in that dark courtyard. He bowed his head and bared his neck to her. Submission. Trust. She accepted his. She marked him and he marked her, sealing the bond not in fire and pain, but in forgiveness and a shared future. He embraced her, burying his face in her neck, in the scent of pine and crushed herbs. Finally home. Lyra held him, her eyes open, looking over his shoulder at her son, and then at the wide, starry horizon. She had once saved her sister's life, only to be sold. This time, she had saved her own, and in doing so, she had saved them all.